Hey, Professor, if you could multi-pin Katie and Hugo.
Done it. Done it. Sorry, gang.
Thank you.
Dogs. Yeah, that's already been done. So you guys, listen, I need to do it again. Okay. What were you just saying, Catherine?
I was saying, who has the cute dog? Who
Oh.
was that, Rocky or somebody else's dog?
No, it's Rocky. Rocky's here with me because Cindy's in Wichita and didn't take the dog unless she drives. Okay, I'm gonna start taking roll at 7 minutes after. We got a few students here now, which is great. Dario, are you here? Dario? No, I think Dario's probably dropped. I gotta print a new roster. Jesus, actually, Jesus is gonna get on late. Jesus is gonna get on late. I'm gonna mark him here. Donna Davis? Armando Lopez. I'm sorry, Armando Garcia. Emmanuel Gutierrez. Brenda.
Here.
Jose.
Here.
Catherine LeMay. You here?
Here.
Good.
Mhm.
Colby,
Here.
where were you last week?
I was sick. I emailed you, but you never responded. So I'm not sure if I sent it to the wrong email or,
I might have got it. Did you send it to my pipeline?
yeah.
And you were sick?
Yeah, I was.
You were so sick you couldn't appear in your jammies? Your nose is like snot was just running down your nose and
I
dripping.
could have with the camera off, but I wouldn't have
It's okay.
sent any information.
It's okay. I'm just pulling your leg. I do remember something vaguely, and I'm sorry I didn't respond back, but
No, it's okay.
that's the protocol. If you're sick or you can't make it, just email me or text me or call me, and then we're golden. And you don't get a weird like an S or a U on this little box that I'm checking. Ugo.
Hi, yes, I'm here.
All right. Eric Mendez. He's probably out of here. Kevin Nolasco emailed me. D'Angelo Rangel. I'm sure he's history. Okay, Josh. Santana?
Here.
John Sesser. John, I'm going to give John an excused. He had all 4 of his wisdom teeth pulled. And he said he was going to show up, but he's probably pretty out of it, I would imagine. Michael Silva.
Yeah. Yep.
Jose Silva. Did I see you there? No, shoot. Jose's usually here. Aurelio. Probably riding dirt bike somewhere. Or is that you, Michael?
That was me.
That's you. That's right. Dennis.
Here.
Mr. Vega. Okay. So one last time. Dario, Donna, Armando, Emmanuel, Eric, D'Angelo, Jose, and Aurelio. Not here. Okay. I'll check again. I'll check back. God, it's going to show you my hat. I have a note here. Hat. Show them my hat. So that was roll call. So before we go on to anything, this is I think this is the 3rd fairway at Pebble Beach. Look at that. Is that insane? It's just such
That's beautiful.
it's such an incredible venue for a golf course. and and that lichen and the way the trees are just windblown and flat topped, and it's like you expect elves to come out of the forest or dwarves with big double bit axes. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. So these are the guys I played with. I've known this guy probably 45 years, maybe 50 years. He and I are both sober in 1990, so we both have coming on 31 years of sobriety. This guy has 31 years of sobriety too, and Jay has about 18 or 19. But I've known these guys all for 30 plus years. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And that's my wife. And that's Charlie's girlfriend, Kathy. Charlie, the guy that was on my left. And that's our dog, Rocky, or Rockefeller Boots. He's 3 years old this week, I think. Somewhere around there. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. There we are again. Now this is 17. It's a pretty long par 3. I had a 5-iron into this trap right there on the end of this trap, the end closest to the tee. But I got out with this beautiful sand shot, left me an 8-inch putt for par. I love stuff like that. That's what we call a sandy par. And then this is a hole I made a birdie on. Of the two, I had 2 birdies on the front 9, both on par 3s, and this is kind of an iconic hole at Pebble Beach. It's very short. It's just about 100 yards. It's super well protected, as you can see. There, you really don't have a lot of wiggle room around the green. You're either over the green and into the ocean, right? You're into the ocean. Left, you're into some gorse, and then it's trapped all the way around. So it was a great hole to get a birdie on for me, a really good hole. And I know some of you non-golfers are thinking, why don't we care? But I was hoping you'd just enjoy the scenery. Okay, so that's Pebble Beach and Big Sur. So we went to, I played at Pebble on Monday, finished at 6, and then drove home. And then got up in the morning and taught a back to work class on Tuesday. So I had a pretty busy schedule, but we did get down to Big Sur on Sunday, down in Nepenthe, which I hadn't been to for years. And I think I've had a resentment for the last probably 40 years about Nepenthe, about a $50 lunch I had there once. But I went back. And I think this is probably closer to a $100 lunch, but it was worth it. And there were whales out there. We were watching humpback whales. Oh, and by the way, that 17th hole, there were, when we got to that hole and looked out, there were humpbacks, 2 humpbacks playing and spouting in the Monterey Bay, as well as a pod of killer whales, orcas. Were dancing around and blowing and leaping, and it was beyond belief. It was like we really had a show. It was just the day of days. I'm going to read a couple things before we get into safety meeting. This is going to be about drywall wall coverings, right? Chapter 18, which we're going to.
That was gorgeous. Thank you for that.
Oh, hey, you're welcome. I'm truly glad to be able to share stuff with you guys. It's fun for me, and I'm hoping it's fun for you too. So I'm going to read a page, I think, about the don't make assumptions, which is the 3rd agreement. The 3rd agreement is don't make assumptions. We have the tendency to make assumptions about everything. The problem with making assumptions is that we believe they are the truth. We could swear they're real. We make assumptions about what others are doing or thinking. We take it personally, then we blame them and react by sending them emotional poison with our word. That is why whenever we make assumptions, we're asking for problems. We make an assumption, we misunderstand, we take it personally, and we end up creating a whole big drama for nothing. All the sadness and drama you have lived in your life was rooted in making assumptions and taking things personally. Take a moment to consider the truth of this statement, which I just did. The whole war of control between humans is about making assumptions and taking things personally. Our whole dream of hell is based on that. We create a lot of emotional poison just by making assumptions and taking it personally, because usually we start gossiping about our assumptions. Remember, gossiping is the way we communicate to each other in the dream of hell and transfer poison to one another. Because we are afraid to ask for clarification, we make assumptions and believe we are right about the assumptions. Then we defend our assumptions and try to make someone else wrong. I hope this is clicking with you, because it sure is for me. It's always better to ask questions than to make an assumption, because assumptions set us up for suffering. Yeah, baby. I love that. I love that.
Done that. I'm guilty.
Yeah, guilty as charged. Me too. Take me out now and shoot me. But just being aware of it. I am so aware these days of how I operate. How I operate under assuming things and taking things personally, and it's really helped me to remember that I don't want to do that, and I have agreed not to do it to myself. I made an agreement with myself, and I'm breaking that agreement all the time, but I'm re-upping all the time. Re-upping. And you know what? I got one of those crispy chicken sandwiches at McDonald's yesterday. Have you ever had one of those? Yeah, well, I'm never having another one because they put the spicy sauce on it. Have you ever had that spicy sauce? Yeah, I can't get that. I can't get that taste out of my mouth. Just hate it. So watch
Maybe you
out.
could ask them to put mayo instead or something.
They're not supposed to put it on it. It only goes on this spicy chicken one. They
Yeah. Yeah,
Okay.
they did.
Now, before we get into the meat of it, I have a knife collection. I'm a knife collector. I just found a new knife maker about a month ago. And so I bought a bunch of knives for my kids and my wife. They're really lightweight. Now, this is their biggest one. This is 37 grams. They make a 27-gram one, and they make a 14-gram one. But they're super lightweight. They're really just, stainless steel. This one's got a serrated edge, and this is micarta, this is graphite, carbon fiber. They make them in wood and all kinds of fun stuff. And it's the brand, they're made in France, is, hey, I didn't do that. Dijo, check it out. They're really cool. If you like knives. I do. I always like to have a knife. We're going to have a safety meeting. And before I start the safety meeting, did Dario, Armando, Emmanuel, Eric, D'Angelo, Jose, or Aurelio come in? Okay.
Yeah, I'm here, bro.
Who's that?
Jose Silva.
Okay, Jose Silva, you're here?
Yeah.
Okay, good. Next time, try to be on time, please.
Okay.
Thank you. Next Saturday. Why are we here? Tomorrow's Easter. Hey, Jose Silva,
Yes.
you know how Easter's figured?
How Easter's figured?
Yeah, how do you figure out the date that Easter is?
Yeah, it's we learned it last week.
I know. What is it?
Isn't it the Saturday after the full moon?
Sorry
Something like that.
for laughing. Yeah, Easter's never on a Saturday. I want to get real clear with you on this. Easter
Sunday.
never on a Sunday, so you got it pretty close, and you got one of them right. Easter is the first Sunday after the first full moon, after the vernal equinox, which is the first day of spring, right? Okay.
Yeah.
You weren't in on that little test, and I wanted to give you an opportunity to chime in. So you got it half right. Now, maybe you guys, you're going to expect this on your exam, right? This is going to be on an exam. So let's, without further ado, let's get right into our safety meeting. And lo and behold, our safety meeting is about drywall. And that's what this whole section is going to be about. So I'll read the intro. Drywall safety. Drywall is made of powder compressed between two sheets of thick paper or fiberglass and is used in most buildings, excuse me, to create walls and ceilings. I would kind of take issue with that because it's actually the framing creates the walls and ceilings. The drywall just skins the framing. Even though it's so common, drywall has its own dangers. Therefore, whenever transporting, installing, or removing drywall, it's important to remember to follow the proper, God, where's my hat? Safety procedures. Handling, please read for us. Let's see. Jesus, oh, did you make it, Jesus? Not yet? Okay. How about Brenda, would you read the handling, please? Start reading handling.
Handling. Drywall can be cumbersome because of its size, shape, and weight. In addition, repetitive motions and awkward positions could easily cause muscle strain that takes a long time to heal. In order to avoid these injuries, consider the following tips. Do not work alone. An assistant can help carry and hold the drywall. Rotate jobs. Take 15-second breaks throughout the day. Use tools that are more comfortable for you to use, such as power drills with 4-finger triggers. Keep your hands warm and dry in cold weather. Set up loads close to waist height. Keep loads close to your body. Avoid heavy lifting. Don't be afraid to ask for help.
Oh, you know what? I need my. Oh, maybe I don't. Okay, good one. Thank you. I'm going to go back over some of this stuff in a minute once we get through it. So, Catherine, would you? I'm just going down the list here in case you're wondering how I'm choosing people, and I'm skipping Jose for now. Circle back to Jose. Catherine, would you read, please? Heights.
Heights. Because buildings are always taller than people, chances are working with drywall will make you work at heights. Falls are one of the leading causes of death in the construction industry, so be sure to always be on your guard when working at heights. Properly use ladders, use appropriate scaffolding, and do not do anything foolish because you think it will save time.
Don't be a fool. And Jose Landeros, would you read us, dust, please?
Cutting drywall will release compressed powder. This powder can contain silica and mica, which can cause silicatosis and
Or
tuberculosis if you breathe it in. Therefore, be sure to wear goggles and a mask, a respirator when you are working with drywall.
Okay, so wow. So silicosis or tuberculosis, not good things. General tips, please. Colby, are you here? Yeah, you're here. Colby.
Cutting safety. Be sure all cutting tools are in good condition and properly sharpened. All dull blades requires excessive force causes sloppiness. Is that what that says? And can slip and cause an accident. Electricity. Electric wires and electrical boxes can be hidden, which poses the chance of why can't I do this?
Where are we? Can we hit electrocution?
Electrocution to drywall installers. Be sure power tools are properly grounded. Assume all electrical wires are live wires. Do not use aluminum ladders near electrical wires. Do not wear watches, rings, or other metallic metallic objects, which could act as a conductor of electricity around the electrical circuits. Housekeeping. Keep walkways and workspaces clear. Keep the floors dry and work with good lighting to prevent accidents.
Michael Silva, would you read the conclusion, please?
When working with drywall, be especially aware of the safety procedures for handling drywall, working at heights, drywall dust, electricity, cutting, and housekeeping.
Okay. So, does anyone want to say anything about drywall? I do, that's for sure. Let's just see here. Let's see. How much does a sheet of 4 by 12 by 5/8 drywall weigh? 70 pounds, huh? All right. 70 pounds. So drywall is, it's pretty universal these days, at least in the United States. Now, I really don't know how interior finishes are done in the rest of the world. You know, I don't know if there's more plaster or more unfinished walls. I mean, we talked about this yesterday in this Zoom meeting we had with this other class I'm teaching for this back to work, about how there are different, because we have a lot of people we have some people from different countries that, like this one person's from Peru. And so in Peru, they don't have, their building techniques are a little different than ours, as well as a lot of them in Mexico, different countries. So I don't know how it is in other countries, but in this country, sheetrock, gypboard, drywall, all three the same exact thing. It's pretty much what we use for wall surfaces. And it's very common. It goes up pretty fast. You can take a building that's studded and turn it into finished walls in pretty quickly, very quickly. It hangs fast, and a 4 by 12, that's 48 square feet each board. So you're hanging, if you're hanging an 8-foot ceiling in 4-foot increments, and you're hanging your lid first and then your bottom sheet, that's 8 feet by 12. That's 96 square feet for 2 sheets. That's a lot. It covers a lot. And we used to hang drywall with nails and then screw it on. You're going to see a whole lot more about drywall, but I wanted to just take a second and tell you a couple of things. One is drywall is heavy. So it's kind of an animal job. It's kind of a job for animals. And when I say animals, I mean like guys that just want to. I haven't seen any female drywall hangers. I've seen more than one female taper, because drywall is pretty much broke up into hangers and tapers. And typically tapers do not hang, and typically hangers do not tape. Now, that's not poured in stone. I'm sure there are plenty of hangers that tape. And I'm sure there's plenty of tapers that hang. But generally they specialize. And it's heavy, man. And so I was thinking it was over 70 pounds, but still hanging 70 pounds overhead on a ceiling, 4 by 12, it's not all that much fun. But it sure is satisfying to, to get the walls done. The dust is pretty nasty. I had a dry cough the other day. We're drywalling now, and you're going to see that. But it's not good stuff to breathe. And none of those guys that are hanging are wearing masks. They're not wearing particle masks. They're wearing the masks that we're wearing when we've got people in there, but they're not wearing particle masks. And these guys aren't wearing particle masks either when hanging drywall. So let's get out of drywall here. Where are we going from here? Safety cam. Okay, we're going to go back to. Anybody have any comments on drywall safety? I will actually stop right now and show you just a couple things. So Rob didn't have one of these, and you'll see this in the video we see. This is a drywall square. The drywall guys don't, they don't use this. Some of them do, and that's not to say they don't. They do use a drywall square, but they are fast and pretty efficient, and they'll make cuts a lot without a drywall square. And then drywall, you don't need a whole lot of sexy tools, and Rob will tell us about that too. But pretty much drywall is cut with that. That's it. That's the tool you need to do drywall. Now there are other tools and peripheral tools for making cutouts, etc. And Rob's going to tell us about that in a video. So let's go ahead and remove that pin and go back to here, and we'll go to our very first video, which is how drywall is made. Did any of you know how drywall is made? Some of you might. I bet most of you don't, but we're all going to know soon.
Steve Rogers is joining me right now. He is the plant manager at National Gypsum. And Steve, I guess this is the place where it all begins.
Yes, this is where it begins. This is the rock pile. We get our rock by ship. And then we also get synthetic gypsum. So this is natural.
Okay, they get their rock by ship. I want to try to find out where that comes from.
Rock. And then this is synthetic. Kind of looks like sand. And this is the byproduct gypsum from coal-fired power plants. And at this point in the process, we have a bulldozer, and he's blending the two to give us a good mix. So we're taking it by this conveyor to the rock dryer to dry off the free water, which is water that's not chemically combined in the gypsum.
So it goes from the big rock pile on this conveyor belt. It gets all combined, and eventually it's going to be drywall.
Yes. Okay, the mixture that the bulldozer just mixed, the synthetic and natural rock, is going into this building. From here, we're going to screen it. We're going to run it through an impactor for the coarse particles to get down to size. And we're also drying it. We're shooting it through a flame to dry off all the free water, which isn't part of the chemically combined gypsum water. It's rain, snow, sleet, all that other stuff.
Okay, so the object here is to get it as dry as possible then.
Yes, it is.
Okay.
The rock dryer is taking away the free water, which is rain, snow, sleet, and we're left with gypsum. Bring it into the plant here, and there we're going to grind it, and we're going to calcine it. That chemically combined water, we're going to take out 75% of it in the middle. From there, it's called stucco.
Now I'm interested in these big spools back here. What's all this material?
This is the other main ingredient of wallboard, which is paper. All of our paper is 100% recycled. And these big rolls, we're going to take the stucco, shoot it in between two sheets of these big rolls of paper, and that's the next step that we're going.
Okay, now how come some of them are different? I see green, tan, and purple.
That's all the different products. In this plant here, we make every product in the company, which is XP product, which is mold resistant, your regular wallboard for residential, your 5/8, which is for commercial construction, and that's just a different type of products. This is why the paper is different colors.
Steve, I see a lot of drywall going by up here. So what's happening in this part of the plant?
This is where we form the sheet. We take the stucco that you saw in the rock get ground down in the chemically combined water. From here, we're adding water to it, shooting it in between two sheets of paper, and then we're rehydrating the gypsum back in this sheet long enough to go to the night where it's hard enough to cut.
Real active area in the plant. So what's happening here?
This is the knife area. What we're doing is we're cutting that sheet that we formed at the wet end. It's 800 feet long. We're cutting it to length. We're flipping it so we don't damage the face in the kiln. We're grouping it side by side and loading the kiln so that we can dry the board in the kiln.
Okay, about how many degrees is that kiln? It's pretty warm in here.
It's 3 zones, and it's about 550, 550, and then 350.
How long does that process take for it to get through the kiln?
From the wet end through the kiln is about 50 minutes.
Cool.
And then about this location of the plant, we finish cut it, we bundle it, we put tape on it for our customer, and then we stack it in the warehouse.
So Steve, this looks like your warehouse, huh?
Yes, this is where we stock our board after we make it for our customer. We have 5/8 Calcor over here, which is a plaster-based product, shaft wall liner there, regular half-inch wallboards right in behind us for our residential customers.
So all of those different variations that you told me about, that coincides with the different colors.
Yes, that way the customer and the architect know exactly what they expect for the job is on the wall by the various colors.
I'm glad that you talked about that because it seems with all these different varieties that you have in drywall, you can cover pretty much any need for residential and commercial use. Huh?
Yes, we ship our half-inch and our 5/8 locally, and then some of the products, we're only one of a handful of plants in the country that run it, so we ship those nationally.
Okay, and so from here, it gets loaded onto a truck and gets, sent out wherever it needs to go.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, great. Well, thank you so much for the tour today, Steve. It was really interesting.
You're welcome.
Wow. Wow, wow. You guys seeing this Wikipedia screen?
Yes.
Yes.
I was a little unclear as to what the heck, where, they get all this dirt or whatever from ships. Calcium sulfate. So gypsum, mostly gypsum. It's a soft sulfate mineral composed of calcium sulfate dihydrate with chemical formula. Widely mined, uses fertilizer, and the main constituent in many forms of plaster. Wow. Wow. What a trip.
Good morning, Rodney. Came in a little late.
Who is this?
Aurelio.
Oh, good, man. Thank you. Thank you for, and you guys, everybody do that, right? And I'm recording.
So did I, Rodney.
Okay, Armando, good. Yeah, so if you guys come in late, I'm not even gonna dun you for being late. I'm just so happy you're here. But thanks, yeah, so chime in. So just for everybody, if you didn't get called and roll on time or 10 minutes, I kind of give you 10 minutes grace, then just chime in when you get here, and then I know you're here, and I want to make sure you get a check after your name if you're actually here. So, man, I'm just blown away by this whole thing, and I'm blown away because it's I mean, do you ever think about, here's what I think about. Who dreams up this stuff? Like who came up with, if we got this stuff, it's called gypsum. I've seen it somewhere. And we combine it with these other things. Like we could get it wet and then we could dry it and then we could like grind it all up and then we could make it into a stucco slurry and then we could get this paper and then we could make these giant robotic machines that did all this stuff and an 800-foot line and knives and flipping it over. I mean, who dreams this stuff up? Who does this? Is this some guy or guys or girls that go, yeah, we've got to be a better way?
Creative, brilliant minds, right?
I guess so.
Aliens.
It's, and really, it's almost like aliens. Yeah, aliens.
Yeah, aliens did it. Just like you're talking about it. Like, who comes up with this shit?
Anyway, I thought it was pretty cool. Everything I've learned about drywall, and let's go now to. Let's watch some stuff. Oh, yeah. Yeah, let's watch some stuff, and then I'll give you a break.
Hey, Ron,
Yes.
you think it's fascinating how they make it You oughta trip out how when you're drilling for it, man, the types of drills they gotta use for that.
Oh, you mean when you're mining for it?
Yeah, that's,
Yeah.
the drills, you have to have a soft core, you have to have a straw, you know what I mean? Because that stuff is so, when you pull it out, when you do blast it, it comes out, sometimes you get it in big chunks, which is better to get it in bigger chunks and have to take the piles and lift through it and stuff, But yeah, the drilling on those, man, the way the water separates everything, that way we can put the amphil in it to blast it and everything. But it's pretty amazing, man, how you got to drill for that stuff, looking for it.
Yeah, it sounds it, and I'd like to know more. In the meantime, I think this is my first one. Let's see what this one is. Okay, we're filming. We're at the Mangone job, and it's just in the process of being sheetrock. All 5/8 sheetrock. Get that finger out of there. This is gypsum board. Okay, so I don't know how it is in the rest of the country, but we don't use half-inch sheetrock anymore. We used to use half-inch sheetrock. Half-inch sheetrock was what residences were done in. 5/8 was commercial, and 5/8 is considered type X, which gives you a 1 hour. Is it 1 hour or is it 20 minute? Anyway, it's considered fire rated. But I haven't seen a job or had a job hung with anything but 5/8 for a long time. So we use 5/8, which is more, when this video was made, was used more in commercial applications, but it's used more and more here. And the whole idea of plaster and that Calcore board, they didn't spell it right. Maybe we'll talk about that, but here we go. Paper on either side, and the trim detail is that all this rock is going to return to the jam with a square metal corner that will get painted out. There's a softened ductwood, which you may or may not have seen. It really came out good, and we were able to extend that soffit, that box. Sorry about the noise. So that it completely covered the hangers. These were big 3x hangers that hung on these trusses, because this was the exterior wall, which we removed, put in a big parallelogram beam, which these site-built trusses are hanging off of, and we were able to box them, pad out, and get rid of the hangers all together. Probably have some skylights yet. Those will get wrapped with wood and cover the 3.5 inches of insulation. These are all drywall, all hung. This is also been padded out to receive drywall to get past the hangers. Get your finger out of there. Drywall beam. You won't see those hangers. You can see now. See those hangers? None of that's going to show. Not one bit of it. This wall is furred out, so we have enough room for the drywall to return into the doors. And we're not hanging the walls with doors on them yet, because we need to get the jams in, because the drywall is going to ground to the jam. It's going to return to the jam with a square corner. The purple board is the MR board. That's moisture resistant. Right? Purple board's MR board? The purple board's MR board? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. It's nice to have on a kitchen wall, your wet walls, your bathroom walls, anything that's a wet wall. So this got furred out, like I said, so we can do that return. This is wrapped opening. Typical drywaller's bench. They're not hanging this wall yet because no, there's no reason not to hang this wall. Yeah, they'll hang this wall. And they'll hang this ceiling too. Now, these guys are in hanging mode. Yeah, what the heck, man? Get to planing.
Cause the door's in the corner and then the oven's sticking out, so.
Okay, and you know that's a wrapped opening, right?
Yeah.
Cubs reset. Drywall. Huh? Yep. There's the edge of it. This is going to have nail metal corners. It'll be a nice square corner detail everywhere. Gotta get the jams in these places. Okay, let's go to the bedroom.
Yeah, I tried to do it.
What are you doing?
He's a movie star. I know he is.
No, you guys are the movie stars. You guys are the movie stars. All these openings are padded out. Padded out so the drywall will go here and we turn here. Nice square corner. Nice, huh? Very nice. Okay, now I'm not sure what's going on here. I'm gonna ask John about that. Okay, well, there you go. Drywall being hung. And I'll interview Rob Thayer, the drywall guy, so he can talk a little bit about it. Okay, let's take a break. We've been at it for 47 minutes. Take a break until 10 straight up, okay? Come back at 10 straight up and we will continue, okay? 10 straight up. I actually remembered, Catherine, amazing. Really amazing. Did we get anybody back? I mean, did we get anybody like Dario, Emmanuel Gutierrez? Did you show up? Eric? You know, Eric must have dropped. I know him. D'Angelo? Nope. Okay. What was I gonna say? Something. Oh yeah. Hey, does anybody have any opinions about solid state hard drives versus high speed hard drives versus SSDs versus HDDs? Nobody? I got to buy a new laptop, and my IT guy says, make sure you get a solid state hard drive. So I went out to Best Buy last night. He told me what to get, and I didn't get it. I went to Best Buy and I wound up getting something at Costco that was a little faster computer, but it didn't have a solid state hard drive. So now I think I'm going to take it back and get a solid state hard drive. I was hoping one of you was going to say, oh yeah, no, we know everything about that. No? Okay. It was a shot. It was a shot. Hey, I'm going to get back into drywall, but I'll share with you this job that I'm doing. This job the Mangone job where we're filming. I have 9 windows. I'm tearing them all out. I have to tear them out. I'll tell you more later because I want to show you and I'll tell you about it. But they're coming out. I'm going to have the lath and plaster taken off around them today. And then I won't remove them all this week because I've got a guy in there doing the floors and he needs to leave his very expensive equipment locked up in the house. And then the week after, so not next week, but the week after, then I'll go ahead and pull the windows out and do what didn't get done to them. And I'll tell you more about it, but let's just stay on drywall because it's kind of involved and it's semi-interesting and a real bummer for me. But you know, the thing about bummers, about things that happen that are not pleasant, ultimately, they're just opportunities for growth and learning. That's really it. And so, without further ado, let's look at Rob Thayer. Now, this guy, Rob Thayer, so you heard me talk about drywall. You saw how drywall is made, at least how they make the sheets. Now we're gonna meet a guy that lives and breathes drywall. His dad was a drywall hanger, and his dad. So we're back on. It's Rodney, your CT 111 instructor. I'm interviewing Rob Thayer of RT Drywall. He's a guy that lives and breathes drywall. I already said that. Rob, we're going to start out with a little bio by you. Could you please tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got into the business and where the business is going, and just tell us about yourself.
Okay, I was born into the trades. My dad was a drywall contractor. He was broken in by his uncle back in the 50s. His uncle started drywall in the 40s. So my dad, having 3 sons, when we all hit, me and my brothers, when we hit 13, my dad took us out, put hammers in our hands, and we started learning basically what he knew as teenagers. And that was probably 1970, 71. Here we are almost 50 years later. You know, I'm one of those guys. I went to college, graduated, came out, discovered I could probably make more money putting my tools back on, you know, and never looked back, I guess. So I've been Locally, been in town since 1979. Seen quite a bit ups and downs in this town, and brings us to today, I guess.
Rob, did you get into hanging drywall purely because it's what your family did? It was kind of a family thing?
No, it developed. My dad wanted to teach his boys a trade. He wanted us to go to college. All three of us did. The reason he wanted us to have a trade is something to fall back on, and it just ends up, it's kind of something you always knew, especially me as a kid, and it was the easiest job to go get.
Yeah.
Waiting for other jobs and opportunities, and pretty soon you're just involved in it. It took almost a decade for me to accept the fact that that's actually what I was going to do.
As opposed to just.
Well, using my education, using my education, applying yourself and trying to get something else, you know, basically white collar, blue collar, and individually learning that actually being in the trades was more satisfying than I think I would have ever had in any other job. Just, you know, being outside, physical work, the feeling of accomplishment because you get to see what you do almost at least once a week, if not every day. It's a new job site. So there's a lot of turnover. It's not basically the old cliche sitting at a desk 9 to 5 and getting bored.
Results in the real world.
Yeah, it's tangible.
Yes.
And that's it's a really fun thing. It's not for everybody. And I know a lot of people in the trades, it takes them a while to figure that out, that's actually more intuitive to them, you know, so.
So you were in a niche growing up, in the construction trade niche, since your family, your dad was doing that.
Yeah, and my brothers.
And they were hanging drywall, so you're really kind of shepherded into this niche. So,
well, as my dad said, it was slave labor. And we took that, and you know, all of us have made a pretty good living at it. So,
and it's what you knew and what was available for you to learn. By the same token, you were on job sites while you were learning the trade and doing the slave labor for your dad. So at some point, I'm thinking you must have looked at other trades and wondered, wow, what would it be like to be a carpenter? What would it like to be a concrete guy?
Well, you always have a dream of doing something different. Especially when you can see certain trades maybe are getting paid more than you, but the learning curve, it's just a whole different scenario when you think about trying to branch and bounce into something completely different. Now, for me personally, it wasn't what I wanted to do. I know some guys that have done other trades. So to me, it was always a sports analogy. You know, you can be good at several things or great at one thing. So
you had an opportunity to shine as a drywall guy based on your
it was a good fit.
And education and good fit.
It was a good fit, but like I said, it took about a decade to realize that because you're always looking over the horizon, hoping something else comes your way as you're building a family and developing some income along, you know, through your 20s. And for me, it was that way. There was that struggle. Is this what I want to do? Even though I had a really good skill set early on. Yeah. You know, because I started learning it early on.
Your skill set in terms of as a drywall hanger.
Right.
Were you ever a taper, or were you stripping?
Oh yeah, no, the whole yeah.
So every drawaller pretty much.
No, I think being that I was raised in the industry, you tend to learn more comprehensively what's going on. Some guys only hang drywall. Yeah. They're just installers. And some guys are only tapers. Yeah, exactly. There are only tapers. Some tapers just don't want to have anything to do with the hanging, and vice versa. And then you have utility guys that know a lot about one aspect, and they might know 50% of the other, and they can mix and match. You know, whether they can make a living at one or the other usually depends on where they start.
Right.
So
is Mike Wood still doing drywall?
Yeah, I think he's still out there. I mean, he's a name. Like I said, I've been here since '79, and he was here. I saw his name out there when I moved here. So I don't talk to him much anymore. Probably been a decade since I've even crossed paths with him, but I'm sure he's still around. Well, drywallers just don't. Yeah.
But I'm curious because it seems like drywall as a trade, two aspects of it: providing and hanging it, getting the walls covered with drywall, and then actually turning those drywall walls into the finished product. That's the two aspects of the trade.
Well, the easiest way I could say it, drywall's the beginning of the finish, okay? Because you have all the rough end up to that point.
Yep.
So as far as the hangers go, the hangers are very, through time and experience and hindsight, they get experience in other trades' mistakes, okay? It doesn't necessarily mean they know the other trades, but they tend to have a good idea of what's wrong.
Yeah.
So if something's placed wrong, if something's sized wrong, something doesn't feel right, usually the drywall guys know that because they have to fix the problem later if it's not fixed immediately. So
because it's finished work, and that was very good thing to add to my knowledge, is drywall is really the threshold.
it's the beginning of the finish.
The finish.
It is.
Drywall goes on the walls. We've roughed everything in. We're covering it all up now. Now we're getting in the finish.
Yeah, and we always assume all those other trades are done at that point with the roughing.
You guys have got to fix all the framers and BS.
Well, we got to be careful.
And they're not always all the way done. It's amazing because when you start covering stuff up, that's when you learn, oh my gosh, what about this and what about that? Although in the case of this particular job, we actually didn't leave anything out.
Careful, we don't fix it because I wouldn't expect the roofer to fix my work. So, but we can certainly identify glaring discrepancies. And I mean, you know, obviously sometimes we don't know what's right or wrong, but there are a few dozen things that are traditionally the same error trade-wise, and we can identify that. So that's, well, a wire that's not hooked up, a wire that's dangling, going to nowhere.
Walls that are wavy.
Well, to a certain point, generally you can't really see the absolute waviness until the drywall is actually on, because you start to see shadow lines then, especially in the joints and stuff. So walking into a raw house, a few of us can walk in and spot things right off, but generally it doesn't show up until you actually put the drywall on. Now, glaring stuff, yeah, obviously. Other things like, say, an exhaust fan in a bathroom, it's not hooked up, easy to see. Easy to miss by someone that's really comprehensive through the house, looking at everything, might miss that one thing. A drywall guy, generally, because we're so close to that surface when we measure, we'll see it.
And when you see things like bowed framing and trimmers that are proud of king studs and the stuff that happens in framing that really make the drywall not want to lay flat, and you know it's going to interrupt the finished work and the job, at that point, at some point, somebody's got to make a decision. Hey, do we call the general or the job super, or do we get a framer back here to correct this, or do we use cardboard shims, or?
Well, see, now you get into the politics of it, because okay, a couple different scenarios. We call it police work. Okay. Personally, I have a concept. I don't police other people's work. That's generally for the general contractor. He's in control of those guys. He can direct those guys. I can't. I can spot it, point it out. Now we have to decide, can I continue? Am I in on a set price? Okay. How bad is it? Is it recoverable? Because again, it can't ever get to the point, in my opinion, where I'm policing the whole job, because now I am doing the general contractor work. Now, if there's something that prevents me from doing my job, yeah, we have to stop. We have to raise our hand, raise a flag, or whatever. But as far as the paper shims and everything goes, drywall is intended to nail tight to the wall. Okay. In the old days, when they plastered, they had the long screeds, they would fill a lot of that stuff, but drywall is not, the intent of drywall is not to do that. You know? So there's a give and take, you know, there's a line you're gonna cross somewhere where now it's costing the drywall subcontractor money compared to someone else should have done this.
And that costs, depending upon how major or minor it is, that cost.
Correct.
If it gets to a certain point, you gotta decide whether that cost needs to be passed on to the owner or to the sub that created the problem or something like that, right? So every job is gonna be different, and I would imagine, and my question to you is, are there any jobs where you just get to hang the rock?
Yeah.
And everything's great?
Well, you know, great's a very subjective term. There's industry standards.
Right.
Okay. Now, some people go beyond those standards. Some people stay at them and some people fall way short. Okay. So again, it gets the political aspect of it. It's like you have to learn some kind of judgment skill along the way, what's acceptable and what's not. Because theoretically, it's wood, and there's going to be discrepancies in wood, okay? There's plates, there's nail heads, there's all kinds of things. And generally, you know, a full sheet of drywall is going to kind of span all that and cover it. But when you start getting, like you said, door jambs that are out of line and stuff like that, you know, you can make that judgment when you see how bad it is. It's kind of a rabbit hole to go down, because it's like, who do you keep passing it on to? Okay.
Right.
So somebody along the way has to be policing the job to ensure the next guy in, and then those tolerances and limits have to be established. Or
yeah, and it seems to me that if you're doing the job the way it's intended for you to do it, and you find glaring discrepancies in the framing that affect the drywall,
correct,
it's time to alert
right
whoever's in charge of general, and let's work together and get this fixed. But also, you know, I'm willing to do a little bit, but I'm not willing to spend a bunch of money because I bid it for X. I'm doing it at a fixed price. Right?
From a subcontractor, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And it's only
Absolutely.
fair. There's nothing unfair about it.
Right.
Because we're working with, like you said, wood that's an imperfect.
Well, the assumption is that the trades before you did everything they were supposed to do. Even us, I mean, good example, raw door jam, maybe we leave the job, drywall's taking an inch past. Well, we don't expect someone to cut that off. We should do that.
Yeah.
But occasionally it happens. So if the door guy does it, no harm done.
Yeah.
But if we're doing it constantly and that's kind of our MO, yeah, that's something that we should be called on and forced to correct.
How has the work changed since you started? And before you answer that, let me throw out one thing. It seems to me that way back when you started,
a little different.
There was a lot less bullnose and a lot less mill core, and things were cased a lot more. So
yeah.
you guys weren't the finishers on doors and windows, as opposed to,
correct.
You know, bullnose is crazy in Santa Barbara.
Well, when I started, everything was nailed.
Yeah.
Everything. Yeah, well, very little. You had maybe a pocket door that, you know, like my dad, we didn't have a screw gun, we had a Yankee.
Yeah.
The old screw Yankee thing.
Who even knows?
Right.
I'm going to stop the recording, and then it's showing you guys the Yankee.
Yeah.
None of you know what a Yankee drill is.
Yeah. So, I mean, he had one in his truck. And so occasionally when there was a pocket door, hey, go get the Yankee, you know, and then it was a problem finding screws sometimes because you didn't always have screws, you know, everything was nailed.
Yep.
And so like for me, when I first started for 2 years, all I did was nail, practice nailing, fingering nails and nailing.
Could you just give the class a basic, just how does drywall work? What's the concept of drywall? In other words, what is it?
Okay.
And why is it made the way it's made? And is it made so that it can accept the mud that you put on it? And what about the nailing?
Short history. The way it was explained to me, you know, and my apologies if I'm way off base, but this is the way it was always explained to me. Drywall became something back in the 20s or 30s when they were trying to make the lathing and plaster more economical, quicker, basically cheap.
Any of you know what a Yankee is? This is the ratcheting screwdriver that we all had. And I had a pistol gripped one, but this one right here, and it's ratcheting. You can see as you push the handle in, it spins, and it has a clockwise and counterclockwise. You can change the direction of the ratcheting spin. Stanley made them, and that knurled, that piece of knurling right there, that's what you moved to change the direction, whether it was to take a screw in or take a screw out.
I have a small one of those then. I didn't know it was called that.
Called a Yankee screwdriver. Yankee screwdriver, yeah. And I had a pistol gripped one. I wonder, I love that one. Let's see if they can get a picture of that. I don't think anybody. Yeah, that's, oh, I might have a blue pistol grip. It's rare. God, I should have hung on to that thing. It's collectible. Holy smokes. Yeah, that's a cool one. Anyway, that was it. Those screwdrivers were in everybody's belt when I started working. Not now, though. Nobody. I haven't seen a Yankee screwdriver in so long, I can't even remember. Can't even remember.
Cheaper. So there was some struggle between the old school lath and plaster to the drywall industry.
And at that point, it was.
Hi, Rodney. Sorry to interrupt.
Well, pretty much three.
Hugo lost internet. Would you mind adding him to multi-pin one more time? Sorry about that.
No problem. Okay, should be good, Hugo. Yeah, good. Did I get him on?
Yes, thank you very much. Thanks.
Oh, you're welcome.
6.5 inch. Very, very few, to my understanding, drywall houses until the late 40s.
Yep.
There was a mix. Okay, so what they tried to do originally with drywall is create a base for plaster.
Right.
And they had things called button board. Yeah, it was just little, I think 16-inch by 4-foot sheets with holes in it to the plaster would key in. Yeah. So fast forward to the 50s when drywall, particularly in California, drywall panels became very popular when, the way I understand it, again, after World War II, the housing boom, they wanted a quicker, cheaper, more economical way of doing walls, especially tract homes. So they started using drywall sheets, used to be called sheetrock. It still is, that's a USG brand. And a lot of the lathers transitioned into the drywall industry. So the old lathers, putting up the wood lath, started hanging the drywall. Mostly 1/2 inch, 5/8 only in the garage firewalls.
I wonder how they ever came up with, hey, we can get this product called gypsum, we can mine it, and then we can smash it really flat and put paper on both sides, and it'll be like a wall.
Yeah, the thing about gypsum, I think the reason they use gypsum, again, the way I understand it, gypsum is the most, if not one of the most prevalent minerals on the planet. And there's some chemical quality to the gypsum that when it heats up, it sweats and lets off moisture, which creates more of a fire barrier, which gives it that type X fire resistant capability just through the mineral quality of the gypsum itself. Anyway, Again, that's how it's always been explained to me, so.
Where is, so there's obviously gypsum mines that mine this stuff.
Yeah.
and factories.
Well, I know there's plants in Arizona. I think California's got some plants.
So it's not necessarily a renewable resource, because we probably have a finite amount of gypsum.
Well, it's not renewable, but it is recyclable.
Right.
They have played around with recycling it, so I don't know how cost effective that is, but I know back in the 70s, there was talk about maybe sending it all to one place. Now I know when you take it to landfills, you can separate it out, and it's about half the cost to dump than it is regular rubbish. So it does have a recyclable component to it. Plus, the gypsum's really good for the dirt. So I think if you crush it up and put it back in the dirt, you know, it just kind of, it's good. I know gypsum itself is good for clay soil and dirt.
And then so you use different compounds for mudding the nails and taping, etc. Could you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, okay, so basically the drywall is installed, and then all the joints and the screws and the mistakes need to be corrected. So it's basically a process of tape, embedding the tape in a joint compound. That joint compound, we call it all-purpose. Basically, the all-purpose embeds the tape, and the reason you use all-purpose is it has a bonder in it, a glue. There are other muds. Some of the muds don't have any glue in it, and they're more of the finished product, the topping. So you don't ever want to use a topping to start with and embed the tape. So you tape it, and that's what we call taping. Okay.
Tape the joints.
Tape the joints and use
tape too.
right. So I don't know. I mean, you know, there's a joint in the wall, and you embed the tape. You would embed the tape over the joint using the all-purpose. That needs to dry. So that's your first day, or the first step. And then generally, most jobs or anytime you're doing any drywall work, there's usually inside a house or a finished area, there's usually a minimum of 2 coats. First coat, second coat. So that would be a first coat over the tape, and then a second coat over the first coat, and each coat goes a little bit further beyond and feathers the edge. Okay.
So when you say feather the edge, I think what we're talking about on this particular joint is that tape's about 2 inches, right?
Tape's 2 inches wide.
So 2-inch mesh tape comes across this joint, and then the mud goes on it, and the mud goes on either side of it. And the more mud, so the sand in between.
Yeah, okay, this is a good example. This is a recessed joint, and it's a.
By the way, stopping you right there, that's how drywall is made. Drywall is made on the edges, it flares in, so you create, we have some.
So here's a piece. This is a 4x8 sheet, 1/4 inch. It comes from the factory like this. So we call this a butt joint. It's a factory edge. We call this a factory butt joint. It's cut square from the factory, and it's clean edge. Almost always the long edges, we call them recessed edges because there's a little recess here. So this is a 1/4 inch, and then there's a little recess, less than a 16th probably, but let's just call it a 16th. And this is wrapped in paper, and it's glued and sealed on the backside.
So it narrows.
So yes, and so that's what we have over here. So this is where the tape goes, and it's recessed so you can embed the tape and get close to this flat plane.
Right.
So after that's taped, next day after it dries, you would generally run a 6-inch knife or box over this. Feather the edges, don't leave big, like, see this edge here is feathered.
Feathers so thin down.
Yes, as tight as possible. Okay, that dries, that's the first coat. It'll need another coat, second coat, a little bigger knife, let's just say an 8-inch or a 10-inch knife. Again, to cover the 2 edges, feathered, and that second coat. Again, that dries.
Now, aren't you mudding the nail holes in the first go around as well?
Yeah, you want to spin and look at this wall? That's a much better wall. Okay, so here's our recessed joint, transitions into our factory butt joint. Process is the same. The only difference between this joint and this joint has a recess this joint has no recess.
So how do you get that joint?
We'll get there. Okay, so we've done 2 coats here. The same process is here, but a little bit different on the coating. So since this is a butt joint, we do tape it the same. Okay, but your first 2 coats would be here and here to create the feathering on the side of the tape. And then a little bit of sort of, we've created somewhat of a recess in the middle.
Yeah, I didn't know that.
That's first coat. Now the second coat obviously would be again here or here. So you're filling the middle and then you're going to hit the 2 sides.
Yep.
Okay, second coat. Now the same thing with the screws. You're going to first coat it. It's going to dry.
Does that happen when you guys?
Generally, it happens when you're first coating here, you're first coating here. So the key for efficiency on taping is trying to keep the whole project in the same circular process. So you don't want to have second coat, first coat, finish coats all going on at the same time. You want to keep the process continuous.
And I would imagine you want the absolute minimum amount of mud to do the job rather than more mud. Than you have to sand it off.
Yeah, because here's what we're going to get to now with the second coat. What a skilled tradesman will learn over time is how not to crown the joints. If you start crowning, that's where the shadowing in the house, the lighting will start showing, and they'll highlight right out, and you'll see little bumps, little crowns. Okay, so that's the key to what you said about not using too much mud. You want to use enough to cover, but the bare minimum to cover. You don't want to use so much that you have to keep working it to get rid of that crown. So first coat, second coat, first coat, second coat. Now, these joints will, for almost any texture, which we call decoration, are good enough for most decorations. The butt joints, however, need a third process. We call it troweling out the joints. So that third day, you'd be troweling out the joints. You might be doing a little touch up, and this house isn't a good example, but if there's an 8-foot ceiling here, there's going to be an angle here. Now this angle, we have tools, we call them angle boxes. It gets hit with it's already taped, just like that, just like the embedment. And so generally we trowel out the butts and run the angles on that third day. Now, after that, it's all dry. There's some sanding that happens to maybe.
Do you sand in between applications?
Well, you can. You don't have to, and then that depends on the talent of the taper.
Right.
Because that's your whole goal over time with experience is to continually improve to where there's less and less sanding.
Yeah, less and less work on, less and less man hours of people
Right.
touching the same part of the
Right. A good taper can get all the way to this process without any sanding. There might be some brush down because you'll have with foam boogers. There might be a little blob or something that needs to be knocked off. But generally, everything we use is sandable. So any mistake we make, you can sand it out. So the less the more you're limiting that,
Yeah.
the more efficient you are. Okay. So, but there's generally some brushing down, sanding, just to take off some of the edges. And again, it depends on the texture, depends on the finish texture.
Skip and smear.
Skip and smear, there's hardly any sanding because the texture itself is so heavy, it almost looks in places like it's not sanded. So generally the lighter you go, the thinner the texture, the more sanding there is.
So a glaze or a number 5.
A level 5 is the ultimate smooth. We can get into textures if you want, but level 5 just means that all taper surface area is skimmed with a thin layer of drywall compound. Okay. Level 4, starting with that's level 5, that's Cadillac. That's basically, it's counterintuitive, but the smoother you go, the more work it takes because you have to take out all the imperfections. Even though we're starting smooth, we're starting smooth. So you think, well, I don't have to do anything to that, but you do because the drywall mud itself has a different paint absorption than the paper. So you want to make one skin. So when the paint goes on, you don't get the phenomenon we call flashing. Everybody's done everything correct, but the paint itself acts a little different between mud and paper. So level 5, the theory is a complete skin of compound. It's all one surface, so everything should work the same.
So the guys that are doing the texture and they're running, especially doing the final texture, that's pretty artistic.
Let me get rid of this.
That's a pretty artistic hand. I mean, that's a real art. And it's an art. There's no other
Yeah.
thing you can call it. And unless you're natural, you practice and got really good at it. Could you tell us a little bit about back up the art of hanging? Because what kind of tools does it take? Do you need saws? Do you need stuff like that? I mean, what tools?
Well, hanging for me and the way I was trained, it's a dance. You have two people hanging the big sheet, so you have to operate together.
I like to hang 12-foot. I understand drywall guys like to hang 12-foot sheets because it's just more board, more wall. The more wall you cover in the sheet, the less sheets you gotta hang.
Less joints.
And the less joints. Butt joints.
Real quick on the math, you know, I have an 8-foot sheet and a 12-foot sheet. So theoretically, if you use 12-foot sheets, you've already cut everything down by 1/3 because you don't have this extra piece. Now, if you have small rooms, yes, that's great. But usually in a global environment, the whole house, you're taking all your cutoffs and you're using them on your small walls. So that's why we use 12-foot sheets for it's more economical. It's better on the taper. It is bigger, but
it's hard to hang on a 5-inch.
you know, but that's just what the trade is. They make them bigger. They make them up to 16. Generally, in a lot of large tracts, you'll see a lot of 14-foot board because bedrooms are 12 plus, less than 14, sometimes bigger. But you're cutting down on the butt joints.
Do you ever hang drywall vertically?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Sometimes it's yeah. A lot of times it'll be spec'd out for it. Generally, that's more of a commercial, institutional, hospital, school, where it's just spec'd out to hang it vertically.
Is there any reason for that? Reason behind it?
Yeah. Sometimes sound, sometimes fire. A big long wall with a lot of light exposure is not a good idea to go vertically because then it has a tendency to flash the joints more because now you've got vertical joints compared to horizontal joints. Sometimes the sun, yeah, you always stagger your butt joints.
Always. You guys never line up the butt joints.
Not intentionally. You should always stagger them. And part of the reason for that is finish. This is a more difficult joint to finish and it's going to finish wider. You're going to create a little bit of humpage in here and that's why we go wider to flatten out the hump. If you line that all up, now you've got a really long big hump. So stagger them. Structurally, it's better. I'm not sure. It could even be a code thing. I don't know, but it's just a common practice to stagger your joints.
What are the tools? What's a drywall going to have now?
Well, back to what we talked about in the beginning. In the beginning, it was just a knife, a circle cutter, a saw, and a hammer. Okay, a tape, knife. Okay, so yeah, the rasp. My dad always called that an apprentice cheater. Okay, a rasp can be used at times when it's necessary, but the more skilled you are and the more experienced as a journeyman you are, you don't need it because everything you can do with a rasp, you can do with a knife. It just takes a long time to learn it. So
what's the process? What's the process of cutting drywall? Just because some of the people in my class will not know how drywall is cut. Can we have you cut a piece?
Dale. I don't know. Oh, wait. Here we go. Okay.
Now this is where this guy's expertise, this next thing you see is so amazing to me.
This is just a piece.
This is MR board, correct?
Yeah, it's moisture resistant board. It's also got a mold inhibitor in it. So everything these days for the last, say, 20 years has come with a mold inhibitor in it. All moisture. I don't know of any moisture resistant drywall that does not have a mold component to it.
It's the MR board that has the moisture,
MR board, it's all got some sort of mold I mean, it may be out there, I'm just not aware of it. So, funny thing is, we still call it grain board because the industry standard way back in the day, all the moisture resistant drywall had green paper on it. And that's why we call it grain board.
Now, are you aware of the fact that to hang MR board on the ceiling in a bathroom, you have to have 12-inch centers on your?
Not anymore.
No, that's gone.
That was the green board. Back in the day, green board was never tested on the ceiling, so it was never allowed on the ceiling. Okay. So then they have issues with that. So then they started with the 12-inch thing. Now, the way these have been manufactured and tested in the last couple of decades, it's okay to put it on 16 on center ceilings. I'm sure some manufacturers still have it in their data sheets from.
Yeah, so way back when, that is really dating me. There was a period where the codes required, if you did use green board or MR board on the ceiling, like say the ceiling of a shower, they required you to have 12-inch nailing. So normally nailing ceiling joists are 16 inches on center. They required tightening that up to 12 inches on center. So more nailing, more purchase to hold the drywall up. And the rationale for that was that that MR board, by its nature, if it got really, really wet, it got really, really heavy for some reason. I mean, I guess heavier than other drywall. Than not MR drywall, which doesn't make any sense to me at all. And it had to be screwed up there so it didn't fall down and crack your crown.
Products that they may still have on the shelf, but generally, we've never had an issue with it.
Well, it was a code issue for a couple of years, and that's what I remember going, whoa, what?
And even more than that, where it wasn't even allowed on the ceiling.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And the rationale of that is that if it got really wet, it would fall on you. And it would...
That makes sense. Yeah, drywall doesn't like water. Okay, so 2 types of cut. This is a rip cut. Rip again along the long axis. You know, just a 6-inch rip cut. Okay.
You just did that. I gotta zoom on that. I gotta zoom on that because I don't think anybody can even see what you did. You don't have a straight edge and everything. You're using your hands.
Magic.
Your tape measure.
So again, you know, if you want, okay, so that's 6 inches. Okay. So if you want 8 inches, you just, you know, you put the 8 and you lock it in on the edge. And again, this takes time. It does take a skill set. And then an 8-inch rip.
So, and what Rob just did is he scored that sheet.
Yeah, you're basically cutting through the paper, maybe a little past the paper. Especially the smaller you get, you got to go a little deeper. Yeah. Okay, so these are rip cuts. So basically, rip cuts are some of the easiest to break. Once you score it, you just need kind of a positive, negative pressure, and it'll break right at your score. Now, just a quick thing, if I had cut this one a lot deeper than this one and I did that same pressure, the tendency probably would have broken there instead. Okay, so it's cut. Basically, again, with the rip, it's easy to snap now. And then.
So you didn't even come and cut from the backside?
No rasp.
You don't cut from the backside?
Don't have to. Sometimes you do. I mean, and then you learn that over time.
You have a cut, break, and then cut from the backside.
You learn over time when it's necessary. Okay.
But you saw the way that broke.
Oh, I can feel it. I can feel it. Especially with a rip cut. Rip cuts, again, they break a lot easier. Okay. In cuts or butt cuts, this is a pretty small piece. Basically, it's the same thing. Now, I'm going to do this without a T-square. A full sheet, you can put a T-square on it and do the same thing. But this is basically
factory edge.
Factory edge.
You got a good straight edge.
Easier on the finger. Rough edge. A little rougher on the finger. You can still do it. So this is an in cut, butt cut. They're cutting something off the end of the sheet. Same thing. We'll go 6 inches. Oops. Sometimes if you go over it again, following the same groove. Now, see, these are a lot harder to break, especially since it's a small piece. If it was a big piece, I'd probably get back here. And again, it's negative, positive pressure. Snap it. Now, see, this is when generally you'll want to cut the back. Yeah, and you don't have to do 100% of it, but you got to do enough to relieve the pressure of the paper holding it together. You can cut it from the back, or you can score it from the inside, and then it comes apart. Again, doesn't work that clean every time, but you learn that over time. When I mean, it's just like any trade, you start to feel it. Okay.
Yeah, no, I can see that it's when you're using as a carpenter, right? We don't get to do that.
Yeah.
Score and clamp
Yeah.
and get our guards out of the way and all this stuff, right? To cut something where
Yeah.
not only do you not have to use saws and stuff like that,
Right.
you can use your finger and a tape.
Sometimes, I mean, the drywall hanging part's more like playing hanger days. You just gotta get close. Taper's gonna fix your mistakes, all right? So, woodwork, the tolerances of especially finished woodwork are so much smaller. You can see a 64th of an inch pretty good, but an 1/8 inch crack in drywall isn't that big of a deal because it tapes. Okay.
Fills with mud.
Fills with mud. Now, you know, a 1/2 inch gap is too big, but still our tolerances are a lot different. So
Another thing that you're able to do that has really helped me out is, we get a lot, ceiling walls are almost never flat straight, and a lot of times not plumb either. Ceilings, whether they're level or not is not that, that's an issue as well, but they have a lot of waves a lot of times. They're not flat straight. You gotta put things to them like crumble. So
correct.
a lot of times we've had you guys come back.
Correct.
And pull and float.
Float it.
We'll have crown molding with a,
Yep.
it'll touch on this side and it'll have a 1/2 inch to 3/4 on this side.
Correct.
And you'll be able to, after building up, you'll be able to pull that. So you don't have the perspective because your eye's not up at the ceiling to see how you've done that. And yet from here,
Yeah.
planes are exposed to. So you guys are able to really, this is where I find drywall guys to be absolute artists.
They can be, and and you said it, if the crown's up, we can float to it and kill it and make it look perfect. What we can't do is go in there before and create that 12-foot long straight milled piece of surface or straight surface for a milled piece of wood to go tight to. So
You need something to pull to.
that's usually the best way to do it, yeah.
Yeah, and that's the way we get to do it too. So let's what else can you tell us? What else have you told us about drywall? And but what we didn't finish with is that kind of cut you off on the texturing because you're working us down through the.
Yeah, we've got 2 coats. We've troweled out our butts. We run our angles. Now, basically, you might go through and just kind of lightly sand or what we call brush down. Then it depends on the texture. You've got textures are various. Old school spray-on textures. You had your acoustic ceilings, popcorn ceilings. You had your walls sprayed on knockdown, which is more of a heavier texture, it's still sprayed on. Orange peel, which is a little lighter. Generally, most houses, and even if the house was a knockdown, the kitchen was an orange peel. I would say the cleanliness.
Kitchen walls, you want to be as smooth as you can.
Yeah.
You want to have,
Yeah, you don't want anything heavy.
Paint, you want to
Yeah.
wipe them down.
Yeah. For the last couple of decades, it's either been smooth or a thing we call cat's paw, which is a flat and smooth sanded texture. I'm sorry?
That was in tight cast.
Yeah, it's flat and smooth, but it has basically a little intentional blemish in it. It's a little easier and quicker on the end to sand it because you don't have to stop, remove that blemish and continue. You can just sand it and keep going. And then it's just a variation of how many, how big, how defined, as far as the degrees of that kind of texture. And there's just all kinds of others, there's sponge textures, plaster textures, sand textures, but those are less less used, I guess, so.
What about other tools besides the razor knife?
Okay, for hanging, as far as the hanging, it's kind of moved into the electronics. You know, there was the moving out of the nailing into the screw guns, which was a plug-in drywall screw gun.
Now, are you using the drywall screw guns with the clutch and?
Okay. After the plug-in screw guns, the cordless ones came out, and they all have the clutch. Cordless has a clutch, and the plug-in ones had a clutch. So now, where were the battery operated ones when I was doing all my work? Because we always drug those cords around the house, and you know, you get tangled up and everything. So the outlet boxes traditionally were always cut out with the knife, measured all four sides, penciled in, cut it out, you saw it out, knife it out. But now 99% of them are cut out with a router. You know, they're just marked. You kind of cover the wall, tack it lightly, the box is underneath, the box is marked, and then you go around the outside edge. Dale, you got a router real quick? Other than that, the basic hand tools have kind of stayed the same. There's a little short keyhole saw. Here's a keyhole saw. A lot of guys don't use this hardly anymore because this has taken its place. It is still used by a lot of old guys like me. Then we have a big saw for cutting big pieces, but still the routers use 99% of the time. And it's just a simple router. It's just a roto tool with a drywall bit on it.
Do you need a hole to bring in there? You can just punch it right through and do the hole.
It'll go right through.
Wow. Okay, we're gonna take a break. We're gonna take a rather long break. Let's take gallery view. All right, I got yeah, let's go till well, no, we'll go till 5 after. It's another 12-minute break, 12.5-minute break. So I'll see you back here at 5 after, eh? Have fun. Whatever you're doing. again. Okay, so.
All right, I'm back recording. I think we ran the back of it for a second. We're talking about, we're still with Rob Thayer here. We're talking about textures.
Well, I think we just use the router. I mean, changing in the tools. Everything has gone cordless now, so there's very little dragging of cords. I mean, which really helps.
Yeah.
So drywall tools are basically hand tools with a few exceptions of the cordless router and the cordless screwdriver.
You use
So,
circle cutters.
circle cutters, but still the guys pretty much are using the router for that too. They might mark it with the circle cutter just to get a good circle for pipes and ducts and stuff.
Mark it, score it.
Score it, yeah, and then they'll use the router, yeah. The only thing we don't have here is a T-square for cutting the drywall, but, well, no. Here meaning where I'm standing,
Oh,
so.
yeah.
But no, I mean, always have a T-square. Helps cutting that square cut. Again, most people can reach 48, 50 inches and still cut with the tape like we did. But beyond that, you need a T-square. It's like if you cut the middle of a sheet or something, so.
Just out of curiosity, drywall, when you figure drywall, is it all bid? Your bid is all by the square foot?
Pretty much, everybody does it different though. Big jobs, square foot. Smaller jobs, you can't do that because obviously, let's just say, if you're figuring $2 a square foot, you can't go to a house and patch 1 square foot for $2. You know, the guy you're paying might want a little more than $2. So, need your saw, Dale? So then, again, everybody does it different, but generally most commercial drywall contractors are, in business.
So drywall used to be, when I first started, it was like 50 cents a square, and then 65, and then 85. Then I remember it was pretty solid, $1 a square for a long time. So now apparently in 2021, it's figured pretty universally at $2 a square. And then that's usually added to, rarely subtracted to, but added to based on how jazzy the finish is, or whether you're doing bullnose or mill core. And if you don't know what those are, hopefully I'll have a chance to explain them to you. But think about a 4x12 sheet is 48 square feet. That's $96 to provide it, hang it, which is screw it off, tape, mud, and texture it. It's not a lot. That's not a lot to do in one sheet. So you got to do lots of sheets, and then it works out. So the square footage, I didn't figure the square footage of the walls in this house, but maybe I will to come up with. But I think his price was around. Yeah, not around. His price was $15,845 to hang this rock, to provide it, hang it, hardware it, and texture it. And if you bid it at $2 a square, it's about 7,500 square feet of drywall. And I'll see if I can't ascertain that at some point.
You're gonna figure, houses, whatever, at per square foot. And then you have multiplying factors, height, conditions,
Right.
technical things.
All that stuff is gonna factor into
Yeah.
your bid, but you're gonna have a basic square foot price for 8-foot ceilings and 5-inch rock, I would imagine.
You have a beginning point, yes, in your mind, but every job's different, especially today. Back in the day, everything was boxy. You just had 3 bedrooms and everything was a box. Very few, you had maybe 2 phone outlets in the house, one in the kitchen, one in the master bedroom. So now houses are a little more complicated, rake ceilings, round niches, whatever. But basically, right. So, but generally you're correct. There's kind of a base number in your head that you're going to start with. Okay. So the more volume, that number can come down. But obviously the less volume, it turns more into a manpower issue, which kind of pulls you away from that square footage. So, and that's the magic sauce, is how to bid it.
Right. Boy, tell me about it, and stay in business. And to make a buck.
Right.
But you've got to factor in the square footage, so you gotta be first and take on. You gotta be able
Right.
to, you gotta know how tall walls as well as the lineal foot of walls and what walls get drywall. You gotta figure, do you even figure openings? Just figure the whole wall.
Generally, no, because most drywall installs, you're gonna run 10 to 20% waste.
Right.
So you figure, basically, personally for me, trade secret, you just roll right through your doors and windows because that's usually gonna account for your waste.
Yeah.
Okay. And I personally figure it in 2-foot increments. Drywall comes in 4 feet. I haven't found a place where you can go buy 1 foot of drywall. 1 foot, it's a 4-foot sheet, 4 by 8, 4 by 12. So if you have a 9 by, a wall that's 9 feet by 9 feet, you really should figure 10 by 10, or maybe because you're gonna have that waste anyway, calculated into it. You gotta buy the drywall, you have to cut it, you have to handle it, you have to throw the waste away. You have to tape the joints. So generally speaking, you should try to figure in 2-foot increments.
And then do you add for, and you must, for jobs that you're doing the trimming? Because some jobs,
Oh, yeah.
just walking away and then.
The corner, and Rod's talking about the corner trim. So you have horizontal and vertical corners, which are
You're doing it virtually every job.
pretty much, some have more, some have less. Again, this is where you have to actually know the job. Horizontal and verticals, okay?
Yeah.
And then the door trims can get expensive if
Second horizontals, that's an obvious vertical wall.
Well, it's a-
Horizontals would be like soffits.
yeah, it'd be the horizontal going on the soffit. So, and the trim could be square or round. We call it bullnose. These are square corners. Bullnose comes in 3 different sizes: 1/2 inch, 3/4, and 1.5 inches. So, obviously, the 1.5 inch bullnose costs a bit more than the 3/4 bullnose per lineal foot.
So this corner, do we have a piece of corner?
Yeah, there's
So
one.
It's a piece of metal covered with tape. Right? Can you show them that?
Yeah, and these come in different styles and shapes. This is called tape on corner bead because it's got the metal covered with paper and it's embedded. It's embedded with the drywall compound. As a company, we tend to use this 90% of the time, maybe even more, for 2 reasons. One, it can go on straighter. The alternative is a nail-on version where it doesn't have the taping flange. It's basically just metal, a little bit wider, and it nails on. So that's going to have to nail on tight, and it's just going to follow the wood. There's not much play you can do with it. It's going to follow the wood. This stuff, at least we can correct some of the discrepancies to a point, because you can kind of pull this and embed it out up to, say, 1/4 inch to 3/8 and make it either plumb or aligning with something or level, whatever you're trying to do. Second to that, wood shrinks, okay, over time. So as that wood shrinks, the drywall is nailed tight to the wood, the drywall wants to follow the wood as it shrinks. Even though this nail-on piece of corner bead is nailed, the metal itself wants to hold its shape. So that's where in an older house, you can go in and you can kind of see some cupping on your corners, okay? It's not a flaw that anybody did, it's just a function of age. So the metal nail-on version tends to just stay in place as basically the house is shrinking away from the corner, and that's where you can kind of see some cupping. Plus, it'll crack easier over time, and
I'm just so used to seeing the nail on stuff. It's
yeah.
nice to see this is so much cleaner.
Nail-on is a highly production type model. You can do it individually with custom homes and everything, but we just tend not to because there's less problems. It's a better finish.
Yeah, because really, ultimately, on these corners, especially these outside corners, that's what you see.
Right.
You see how
Right.
straight or unstraight that corner is.
Right.
It's
Right.
the whole thing.
Right. It's a little slower to do this when time is money, but ultimately you get a better job and less callbacks and less problems. And it lives longer. It'll just stay right on that drywall and go wherever that drywall goes. So back to the doors. Some windows and doors get wood cased, so we don't trim them out. But a house like this where everything has a return and the doors, the casing or the door jambs will have a L-metal trim that goes right to it instead of a wood casing.
Do you ever want them curved? Do you ever tuck your handle into a curve in the jam?
Yeah, I'd say most of the wood jambs that we trim to are curved, not all. Kerfing, generally, there's going to be a smaller reveal. You know, if you have a 3/4 jam, you curve it in the middle, you get a 3/8 reveal.
Yeah, I was asked if we wanted
To us, it doesn't matter. We can go behind the jam, so you have full jam exposure. Okay. The problem, or let's see, it can create problems if it's not curved if you want to go on top of the jam, because the metal comes in a manufactured size. So we can't really do anything that's running because it's going to hit. The kerf saves you sometimes if the walls, like especially in a remodel, if the walls are a little out of plumb, you put a new jam on, the kerf is, or the trim is longer and it goes inside the kerf. Okay. So that, and it locks in. So the advantage of doing a kerf would be that you have a little more play on the manufactured piece, and it locks in a little better. Other than that, it doesn't matter. I'd have them curved. And for the last reason is you don't have to fight the shim that's inside behind it, because now you got the shim in the way trying to shoot in behind the jam. So.
And then, that's true. And then what quarter reveal, then you get your curve.
It's whatever you want. Yeah, it's whatever you want.
Any particular challenges that come up on this job or another job?
Nothing out of, I mean, nothing that stands out. The only thing really different about this job would be there is this exposed truss ceiling that for us, we have to cut around and finish tight around all the truss work up to the roof sheeting. Other than that, it's a pretty standard house, you know, but this room here is kind of unique for residential. You don't get this look much in a residential.
Now, as I remember drywall hanging, you guys hang the lids first.
Generally, you're supposed to.
Does your wall support the edges of your lids?
Yes and no. I mean, you just start with the ceilings and work your way down. The gaps around the edges of the ceilings is covered by the wall sheet. So if you do your walls first, now when that ceiling sheet, you got to have a nice tight fit, and you're losing your backing capability because you've already covered up some of it on, you know, think of a 2x4 wall with a 2x6 plate going on top of it for backing on each side of the wall. Doesn't leave you much on each side. So if you do the ceiling first, you've got enough, but if you get your drywall on the walls first, you're going to take up a lot of that wood. You just start on the ceilings. You know, sometimes we do walls, you know, in a rare condition where we would do the wall first and we would do the ceiling afterwards, but very, very rare.
So how many sheets on this job?
I'm thinking there was stocked with about, I'm trying to remember, maybe 90 4x12s and 20 something 4x8 green board. Looks like there's some extra green board. So
When you get it overstocked and you have board left over, do you have a place? Do you have a yard? Do you have some place this stuff?
yes, and there's two ways to look at it. Some people short stock it and then bring the board in later. I always prefer to overstock it because when the guys are here working, when they run short, sometimes it's a panic scenario to get them more board, say at 2 in the afternoon to finish the day and just be done. It's a lot easier to take it out later at your own convenience than to try to panic to get it to them, you know. And it's always a guess. You try to get it close, but if I was going to err, I always err higher, especially in logistical difficult places, such as anything on State Street, commercial-wise, because after 9:30, trying to move material on State Street downtown is impossible. So we always overstock when we're kind of in that kind of environment. If you're way up in the canyons, I mean, this is kind of off the beaten path. So we, you know, purposely load up a little extra just in case, so we don't have to run this far out to bring more wood.
Newton's? Is Newton still around?
Newton's been out of business about 6, 7, 8 years ago. So,
Drywall, are they gone?
well, Oxnard Drywall is gone. They've changed their name 3 times, but personally, my big vendors from Santa Maria, West Side Building Materials.
Do they stock as well?
They do.
All of them?
They do. They do.
Deliver and stock?
They do.
before.
Bedrock locally. We get a lot of our immediate stuff off the shelf, small thing, anything we need instantly. I do have a drop down yard. Most drywallers have some kind of drop down yard, some kind of storage yard, because you do tend to accumulate ladders and scaffold and extra material, and you just need some space. Our toys are big, so we need space for it.
So is it covered yard? You have a covered yard?
Yeah.
Is it covered?
Yeah, I covered it.
Great.
Yeah.
You have a yard.
But it's California.
There's that. What I've always really liked about the drywall work is that you guys get in, get out really fast. Never had to wait around for drywall. It's like, let's get it done. And then and you cover up all this stuff that now you have this nice smooth wall. You don't come here with a whole lot of tools. It seems like, you know, if you choose drywall as the thing that you want to do, you're not buying, you don't have to go out and buy a $1,500 Festo domino tool to join to these joints.
Generally not. I would say to tool up, it's definitely less than $500, but you could probably tool up for a couple $100 as you're beginning. And then as you learn, you're going to add to that, because it takes years.
Are you looking for entry level people that are?
We're always looking. We're always looking. The industry's been a little upside down lately. We've lost a lot of skilled labor through aging out, moving on. Yeah, I mean, it just, there's the natural attrition. And for the last couple of decades, there really wasn't.
Aging out, huh? Yep, I tried to age me out, but I refused to go. I'm like a bad penny.
A base underneath that coming up. There was a middle base, and that's kind of where we're at now. A lot of that had to do with pricing. Prices, say 15 some odd years ago, got so depressed there wasn't any extra money to train anybody. So everybody was just kind of running ragged trying to keep up with it and make a living. So we kind of lost kind of a generation there. So things are getting a little better now. So we're having a little more time, a little more opportunity, a little more ability to actually hire someone and train them. Okay. We're still finding it hard to find those people because of interest and or just availability.
It's hard work too.
It's very hard work. No, there's no doubt about it. It's hard. You're gonna go home dirty every day. Yeah.
Now, what would you say to an entry level kid, 19, 20, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, coming to you for work? What would you be looking for? And what's the thing that's going to stand out the most? This entry level guy, you're going to want.
You're going to have interest in it. If you're not interested in it, it's not for you, because you'll learn real quick. You'll learn real quick. This is not something you're going to want to do. Seriously, it's not an easy job. Everything we pick up is heavy. Okay. Well, generally 5/8 generally is 1 kilo per square foot, 2 pounds a square foot, 2.2. So you figure 48 square feet in a 12-foot sheet. Well, in a 12-foot sheet, they're running 100 pounds plus. Okay. So, I mean, that's generically. So you just figure a sheet of 5/8 is 100 pounds. Okay. Now, does one guy hang a sheet by himself? No. Okay. So, but you should be able to at least pick up an 8-foot sheet and install it yourself without a partner on the walls. Now, ceiling's a different story. All ceiling work takes 2 guys unless the piece is small enough to handle.
Did you start on the walls with the bottom and then step the top?
Depends. It depends. If it's an 8-foot room, you start from the top down because you want to leave the crack at the bottom. Okay. So most 8-foot rooms are rough framed in at 97 inches. So you're going to put some drywall on the top. So you're still going to have, you know, a 1/4 inch to a 1/2 inch gap. And you want that on the bottom. And then we have a tool, it's called a kicker. It goes in and it's a lifter. Okay. So other than that, it depends on the room. Obviously, these rooms, you start on the bottom and stack them up. Okay. So different journeymen do it in different ways. Personally, I like starting with the hard, heavy, nasty stuff first, get that out of the way, because you always feel best in the morning. And then later in the day, you're not doing the heavy lifting.
That's a good point.
So, and that takes time to learn. And then you have to be able to read the room and figure that out. And it just takes years. And the learning process is highly dependent on the teacher. You know, if you're being taught well, you'll learn well. So, but as far as getting in the trade, or in the drywall trade, you really need to have an interest in it. You can't be afraid of hard work. It's going to be hard. There's just no way around it. And it's going to be continuously the same all day long. Although you're in a different room, you're still doing the same thing. You're cutting, you're hanging, you're cutting, you're hanging. Yeah, it's highly frustrating. So you have to have a little tolerance for frustration, because every time you think you've got it right, you're going to find not quite. You might have to trim it. So there's some 2 steps forward, 1 step back sometimes that you just have to swallow and accept that it's going to be part of your day. You know, it's just like anything. I mean, things aren't going to go smooth the whole day long.
Years ago, I wasn't paid by the piece, by the sheet they hung.
I learned, grew a family, cut my teeth, piecework. I am a strong believer in piecework because it teaches you. It teaches you how to be efficient. It teaches you how to be efficient and fast. And it teaches you how to cut corners without cutting quality, because my dad used to always tell me there's 100 different ways to put this sheet on the wall. 100 different ways. You can figure out dozens and dozens of ways to do it, but there's generally one best way. And that's what you're always striving for. You may not know it in the beginning, but you constantly want to be adaptable enough to accept that the way I was doing it might not have been the best way, because now here's a better way. Because with piecework, it's all about getting the job done for a set price. And if you do that in less time, okay, you make more money. And it's all about money.
But we don't pay people that way anymore.
It's hard.
Legally pay people.
Well, they've carved out some legality to it, but it's hard. It's hard because you can do it in big track settings where you have a lot of cookie cutter stuff. But individual custom homes is hard because of job site conditions, job site, whether it's what style of house, whether it's cabinets come too soon, now you're working on cabinets, whether you can start here. It's a whole mix of things. Back in the day, little box houses, little 3-bedroom tract houses, they're all boom, boom, boom. Everything's ready at one time. You jump in, you finish it, you move on to the next one. It's just not that way anymore. So there's a lot of give and take. The thing about it is, though, there is still a measure of how much production is necessary or expected that does relate to a piecework setting that you should still be striving for, because that's going to separate you. You know, it's going to separate you in your ability. your ability to make more money because you're putting up more board. And it's not just putting up more board, it's putting up efficient board where you're not wasting so much.
It's a way for you to gauge how good a
Right.
guy's doing.
And-
It's making you any money.
And that's how you climb.
Yeah.
And that's how you climb.
Climb by hanging.
And you learn.
more board.
And you learn because, you know, drywall, after a while, it's so repetitive, you can kind of turn your brain off, okay? Because it's just repetitive. But if you challenge yourself, okay, say, oh, I hung 30 sheets yesterday, now let's see if I can do 32 today.
Yeah.
That kind of thing, you know. And it's, again, it's a constant daily challenge to always try to put out. And some days you just don't have it. Again, back to the sports analogy, you know. It's a very physical job, so you gotta keep yourself in shape, you know. And if that's the job if you wanna pursue, you gotta have a certain amount of strength. There's a certain amount of a lot of math because you're constantly adding, subtracting, measuring. So the quicker you are with numbers, the quicker
When
you.
you call that, when you call these guys out, the duplex outlets, you call it outlets, you call it center of outlet, is that how you?
Well, with the router, you just gotta mark somewhere in the middle. But back in the day, you'd have to actually measure it. So let's say if you put your top sheet up, now I gotta measure down, I gotta know where it is. So, and then you learn what your tolerances are because there's always movement in the wall. You think it's square, you put it up, it hits, it's not quite there.
Dude, that looks like it grew there. That was so.
Well, that's cut out with the router. Yeah, I mean, it's a router cut, so it goes right around the edge.
Put it up to it and then route around it in place?
Generally, like that, the sheet would be tacked on so it doesn't move. There would be some kind of mark, and you can see where there's a pencil mark on it. So they made a little mark. So I'm saying the mark might have been right there. Router goes in, you pull it out and to find the edge. You find the edge, you come out, you go in, and then it goes counterclockwise around the box.
So he's actually routing out around the box.
Yeah.
So that's why it's so tight.
Yeah.
It's not,
Yeah.
I'm gonna throw a tape and measure and transfer that.
No, and it's a skill. You can get wild with the router too. It's still a skill.
The good news is if you slip a miss and not like a cherry wood door where you
No.
just ate the
It's
door.
drywall. It's drywall.
Make it go away. So, Rob, you have done a fantastic job. You're a great interviewee. I'm gonna get in the frame here and say, hey, I hope you are all enjoying this. Is my lens cover open? I hope you're all enjoying this. And Rob Thayer, big hand. Thanks, Rob. Way to go.
It was fun. Thanks. All right, back to work.
This last bit, I think, is pretty short, if I remember correctly. Pretty short, like just.
Okay, so we just finished interviewing Rob Thayer, and I'm gonna walk around and just look at some of the drywall aspects to this house. Nice and drywall aspects.
Okay, see how we're returning? All square corners return to the jam. We're showing a fair amount of jam because I didn't have these jams curved. And if you're confused about the kerfing, I can illustrate that. May not have time today, but I can.
So I've done it, and the returns gonna be really nice, tucked in behind the jam, showing a lot of jam. I mean, really nice tight joints. So these joints will tape in mud and come out really invisible. You will not see these joints. Really good job. They've got nice straight edges on the corners, but we don't have to do any casings, trim out of the doors and windows because the drywall guys are doing it. And our thick wall conditions, we've got a return to the wall. Nice with a square edge, nice clean, very clean look. Showing most of the gym off. Really looks good. Looks good. This is Dale. Unbelievable drywall hanger. Looking good. This soffit, I love the way this came out. This soffit, if you remember, this job chases the ductwork. Chases the ductwork and a whole lot of gas, water, and electric that makes its way from that side utility room across to this side of the house over here.
Get that finger out of there.
Go in right now. Here's a recess that's created for the TV that John framed yesterday. And this is going to do this really clean look around the fireplace with just going to have a hard metal edge. And this is cementous board because we need non-combustible 12 inches above and 8 inches aside minimum around fireplaces that burn wood. Gas fireplace is a different story altogether. You have none of those regulations apply that I just said. We were leaving these trusses, as you all know. This is a wrapped drywall opening. This gives corners. No jam.
And there's no reason for using MR board or green board in that opening. They're just using scrap that they've got. You can use MR board in place of drywall. There's no penalty whatsoever.
These get jams.
But conversely, in a wet area, you want to use MR board. So the opposite is not true. You can use MR board in dry or wet areas, but you can't use regular board in a wet area.
Doors, and we're waiting on the doors. Skylight well and drywall. Waiting for the jams and doors and no ashes. Oh yeah, you guys got this worked out perfecto. What a good idea. Bathroom, this is the MR boards. We stopped it here with the metal corner. We're gonna have a waterproof plaster condition in our tub shower. This bathroom, as well as this is a wall hanging vanity on that wall. It's probably out there. Oh shoot. We're gonna finish that thing off. Dang. I gotta call John. But I forgot. Anyway, so signing off for drywall for now, okay? Oh wait, I'll take you into the master. Let's go into the master. Let's look at the bathroom. We gotta get these doors on. Gotta get these doors on. Here's the master. They just hung this morning while I was here filming. Clean as a whistle. Wow, super clean. All right, later.
I'm recording, right? I hope. Let's see. I'm recording, right? Yeah, I'm recording. Okay, so does anybody have any questions before I jump into the book a little bit?
Yes.
Fire away.
Okay, so he talked about staggering the joint.
Yes.
Now, to me, it just looked all cut up and square, and you had the joint in like a cross, So what does he mean by staggering the joint? Like how you would lay like flooring, hardwood flooring, or bricks or something, like stagger like that, or?
I'm going to show you. I'm going to illustrate. A wall, an 8-foot wall, 8 foot tall, right? It's studded every 16 inches. Your board's hanging horizontally. So you're going to hang one board to there, and you can have a butt joint. This is not to scale. Hang one piece of board there, and you're gonna have a butt joint, right?
Uh-huh.
You're gonna hang another piece of board like that. You are not gonna have that joint on this second piece of board go up like that. You're gonna stagger that.
Okay. So kind of like the
Or it's gonna hang from that,
flooring
right? So
or
your
bricks.
vertical joints are always staggered. And that's structurally sound. You do that on everything you do. Sheeting, decking.
That's what I thought he meant, but when I saw the, it looked like everything was like all butted up into like a cross, you know, instead of, it didn't look staggered. That's why I was wondering. And then I was wondering, what is rasp?
Do you know what a rasp is?
No.
Okay, a rasp is a file, a coarse file, and a rasp that
For drywall only, or?
no, a rasp is any file. And there's all kinds of rasps. Let's see if I have a rasp. I thought I had a 4. Oh, I do have a 4-in-1, I think. Hang on, I'll show you. Show you one kind of rasp. Then I'll show you a drywall rasp.
Okay.
Let's see, where's my? Shoot. Huh. Well, I have a 4-in-1 rasp, but I always carry in my belt. But a drywall rasp is different. Drywall rasp is different. Let's just see if it's still, because this is what we called them.
Sureform.
Right there. Stanley Sureform. That's for drywall.
Okay. Kind of looks like a cheese grater a little bit.
It looks a lot like a cheese grater. Exactly correct.
Okay.
And I think they're not just made for drywall. Sureform. I think
I have a quick question for you. This is Hugo. I'm wondering, so where exactly are we filing? Is this to file the edges down or the face of the drywall?
Okay, good one, Hugo. Edges. Yeah, you would never ever use this on the face. You never really do anything on the face because once you break the paper, once you get past the paper, you're just into a bunch of white pressed powder, and it gets friable pretty soon. So it's really for shaping edges, for smoothing edges, for taking off the gypsum off the edges. It'll cut paper on the edge as well.
Like the cut edge that they just cut, they want to smooth it out.
Yeah,
Okay.
for smoothing out a cut edge. It's exactly what it's for.
Okay. And then when he talks about a circle cutter, is he talking about like using a compass and then cutting around it, or what's he talking about, a circle cutter? Sorry, I know I got a lot of questions. I was like writing things down.
That's okay.
I'm like, what is that?
A circle cutter is, it's a compass, but it's made for cutting drywall. It looks just like that. So really, right? Like cutting any circles. It's got a trammel point. So any circle in our business is made with a trammel point, and then a knife or a cutter that you spin around a trammel point, and it's easy to do a perfect circle of any radius as long as you can change the radius. There's your cutter, and it's supposed to just score the paper. And then you take it out with a saw, or you finish with a knife, or in the case of Rob's guys, they use a router.
Could you do that on, like, say, a piece of plywood just to score it, and then maybe jigsaw or router around it to make the hole?
No, if you were doing a piece of wood, you just use a compass and put a pencil line on it. There's no reason to score it. Although, now that you mention it and coming to think about it, that may be a really good way to go. Because if you get a nice clean mechanical score, with a trammel point, then you have something that your blade can follow. It's already scored, rather than just following a pencil edge by your eye. So that's a pretty good idea. I'm gonna have to check that out. Try it out. I've never done that, and I've spun a lot of circles. Go ahead.
Yeah. And then what is kerfing?
Okay, so
how do you even spell it?
Kerf. Kerf. I noticed on the closed captioning, they were all over the map on how they spelled kerfing, but let's see here. Okay, so kerfing, that's a saw kerf. That's a kerf left by a saw.
Okay.
So the kerfing that we were talking about,
Was that like used with tongue and groove, like to make the groove for the, like tongue and groove flooring, maybe?
no.
No?
No,
Okay.
cutting a groove is bigger than a kerf.
Okay.
Basically, a kerf is the thickness of a saw blade. It's what a saw blade leaves on a piece of material. So when we talk about kerfing jams, if this is the jam, right? I'm going to say, I want to look down and say, this is the jam.
You're a little bit out of focus.
Focusing yet? Sometimes it takes a minute. Come on. Come on. Okay, better? Yes?
Yeah, that's better.
See if I can get
Oh, there you go. You're there. I see it.
I'm gonna make it even bigger.
Awesome.
So if this were a jam, I hate these things.
Gotta throw those away. You're great using them.
Sick of them. I'm so sick of them. Okay, if this is a jam, a door jam, and in our case, it would be married to or nailed to the trimmer stud. So we cut away a wall and we're looking down on it, right? We've tipped it up. And this is the king stud. And then this is a jam, a 3.5-inch jam that the door is going to hang off of, right? And so let's say the door is going to be here. That's the door. It's got butt hinges. There's the knuckle of the butt hinge. There's the stop that the door stops against. So the drywall is going to go on because we've got a 3.5-inch wall, 3.5-inch jam, because we're going to bullnose it, or we're going to mill core or square corner it. We're going to let the drywall guys trim it out. Our drywall guys are going to hang drywall, and their square corner is going to tuck in just like that. They're going to expose the whole jam. Now, if I wanted to, and I may still do it if my doors haven't been hung, I'm going to go in and call for a kerf right at 3/8. You can say whatever you can tilt wherever you want, but I'll put a 1/16 of an inch cut, just like that, about 3/8 deep, 1/16 inch wide, so a narrow blade kerf, and then that drywall corner is going to tuck into that kerf. So it grounds it and it shows less of the jam. Now, I'm fine with it grounding behind as well and showing all the jam, because that's what we've got going on in there. And I actually kind of like the look in this place because it's so minimal. I like seeing more of the window, but that's what a kerf is. And that's the kerf that Rob was talking about.
Okay, and then you said mill corner?
Yeah, mill core. So a bullnose.
Yeah, the bullnose is the rounded one, right?
Yeah, the bullnose is the rounded one.
That's what I have in my
And
house.
this is mill core. And the
Okay,
mill
so
core goes like this.
that's just the sharp corner?
Mill core.
Okay.
MILCOR. And yes, that's a square corner. That's
Okay.
That's a corner bead that's square. Mill core may be a brand of it, but over the years it's like Kleenex and tissue.
Right.
Okay, let's see. Any other questions about all that stuff that you saw? You saw a lot of stuff.
No, but I was wondering, why are you taking out the windows of the house?
Oh. Okay, so yeah. I think what I'm going to do is Jim and I want to go through this chapter with you, some of the questions in the back for the 10 minutes we got. So I'll tell you next week, because I think Jim was asking, what are we going to do next? And I think Jim and I will talk about this, but I think we're going to do windows and exterior doors. And then it'll be a really appropriate time for me to talk to you about what's going on with these windows and why I have to take out these 9 windows. It's been kind of consuming me, but now that it's happening.
But wouldn't you say, Rodney, that from what he said and what from Carl says, it's just to make a better estimate so you don't under order your materials?
Say that again now.
You know, if you do, if you just gauge it by the whole wall size, then you make sure you have enough material.
Yeah.
So if a board breaks or something of that nature, you have enough to cover yourself.
Well, yeah, you want to.
Carl said 10%.
10, the guys use different multipliers, 10% plus for waste and overage, 15%, you know, I mean, over time you learn what you need to do, but I always like to put in 15%. I would rather have over than not, because most stuff can go back if you keep it intact. And it's a real drag to run out of material and have to go try to find some when you want to finish a job, or you're able to finish that day or that afternoon. Drywall is really incredible, and there are types of drywall. But anyway, I digress. I really do want to show you this. So let's share the screen. So you've all read this, right? You've all read the book. Talks about wall finishes, hardboard, fiberboard, solid wall plank, plaster, cement board.
You know what? I didn't hear you. What did you say after hardboard? Sorry for interrupting.
That's okay. I'm assuming you've all read this chapter, and I was just kind of skimming it. Hardboard and fiberboard, solid wood paneling, plaster. These are all interior wall finishes. And there's some wall finishes that we've been talking about drywall, but there are other wall finishes. There's panelings, plaster. So I'm going to talk about a little bit about plaster and calcor. And if anybody asks me next week, because we're going to run out of time, I'll tell you about hardboard and fiberboard, because that's a fairly old-fashioned way of finishing. And I've done a few houses, and we were going to do our tiny house in a fiberboard and bat. And a board and bat interior finish is not a bad way to go. I think we're going to do plywood, 1/2-inch birch or maple plywood as a finish on our tiny house, but that's another story. So just the common wall finishes. Drywall is the most common. And then after that, and in that vein, are plaster walls. And these days, we're not doing plaster the way we used to, which is a full Keen cement plaster, which is 2-coat plaster on some kind of a lath, expanded metal lath, a button board lath. We don't use wood lath anymore, but the whole idea of plaster over drywall is drywall is multiple coats. It's the board's hung, and then you got to tape and mud it, and tape and mud, and then more mud, and then more mud, and then a final coat. So it's about 4 coatings with sandings in between, depending upon how good of a drywall taper you are. The good drywall tapers need less sanding, as Rob spoke to us about. But a plaster wall is a little harder material. Then it's not quite as soft as drywall, as a drywall texture. The board it goes on is called calcor, Kalkor, or blue board, because it's a bright blue paper on it. And it's made to receive unical plaster. You can put unical plaster on regular drywall, but you have to put a special bonder on the board. So instead of that, you buy calcor, It hangs just like drywall. It looks like drywall, except for the blue part. It cuts like drywall, but it's made to receive Unical plaster, which is made to go on at about 1/16 of an inch and cover everything, cover all the joints, and the entire wall, all the paper, and as you move. It's not a, once you get done with the wall, plastering it from say left to right and Unical plaster, then you're done. A light sanding, and then you can prime it and paint it. And all this stuff gets primed and painted. So let's just see what we got here. We got drywall construction. They talk a lot about drywall construction, which we talked a lot about, or saw a lot about. And here's a bunch of tools, right? The corner tool, the outside corner tool, the pole sander. You know, these guys don't do as much sanding. I've seen a lot of drywall work. I've had a lot of drywall work done for me. And these guys sand very little. And I think it's because they're so good. And as Rob pointed out, the better you are with a drywall trowel, by the way, this is an 8-inch mud knife. That and a tray is what you'd see drywall guys doing on the wall and feathering out on either side of a joint. And then I'm telling you, when I say artistes, you watch these guys work these knives, they're just unbelievably good at it. Unbelievably good. So they're talking about the different Type X boards, and there's insulating board, which has got aluminum foil on the back surface, which I don't know how much insulation that really does. That's kind of questionable. There's pre-decorated boards. There's boards. There's vinyl wrapped boards. There's pre-finished boards that go on. They have a hanging system, and they're not meant to be. They're made of gypsum, but they have a finish on them, so they're more like a wall panel. They don't get. They have to be hung blind or with finished nails and stuff like that. But there's a typical drywall hammer. Most of these guys do not use. Drywall is screwed off, but typically it's tacked with a hammer and nails just to get it to hang and then screwed off. But these days, with their cordless screw guns and magnetic screw holders and things so efficient as far as screwing off, these guys screw off everything. They very rarely hammer anything, but they still do hammer stuff. The couple of things I wanted to illustrate about drywall, I know we're totally out of time, but I want to illustrate something to you on the board. Two things that are really important to know about drywall. Well, I don't know how important they are, but there are two aspects of drywall. One is if you're doing drywall, for yourself, it's probably a good idea to use some drywall nails to hang it and then screw it off. It's a little bit easier than having to wield a screw gun just to get it hanging on the wall. But the things that are kind of cool to know is that drywall nails are cupped. They have a cup. You look at them, they have a cup, so that when they go down, they have a place to receive the drywall mud. Because if you noticed when we were looking at that, you had all those little dots on the board, right? Those get mud on them and they disappear. But those are screws or nails. The nails have that cup. A drywall hammer, that hammer that you just saw an illustration of, it has a convex head, side view of it. It's a rounded head. So it actually dimples. If you use a drywall hammer right, you drive that cup-headed nail into the board, and you don't penetrate the paper. In other words, you don't cut the paper, but your head, your cupped drywall hammer head, is also got some waffling on it. So it puts it indents the gypsum, it indents the paper, it makes an indentation that's made for to take drywall mud, and then it scores the paper a little bit so that the drywall mud has something to grab onto, just like the lath serves for stucco, you know, the stucco lath. The same principle. And then the other thing I wanted to illustrate is that is a piece of board on the 4-foot side on end. If you look at the back's perfectly straight. That's the part that goes on your wall, straight as an arrow, right? It nails to the stud. But up here on this edge, it tapers like that for about 1 inch plus. And same thing down at this end, it tapers. So that way, if you didn't get what Rob was saying, when that next piece of board goes on top, it's got a taper as well. So that's that recess, and I've exaggerated it, but that's the recess that gets the mesh tape, it gets mud and mesh tape, and it allows that mud to go on and fill that joint and not project out and be a hump on the drywall. It stays pretty flat, and then they pull it in both directions and feather it out. Okay, so that was pretty comprehensive drywall stuff. I don't know if I'll take the time to write some questions maybe later. I got a bunch of great questions to ask you, including how do you figure Easter? But for right now, I'm going to say happy Easter. Enjoy the spring, enjoy the Easter. It's a pleasure to spend Saturday mornings with you, and I really mean that. I look forward to this. I didn't think I would, because I usually look forward to playing golf, but now I'm looking forward to sitting here with y'all, because you know, I figure you're here because there's some stuff you want to know, and I'm able to facilitate that, you knowing that, or at least presenting you with some information. And as I do this more and more, I realize just how, by virtue of how long I've done this, how much information I've got about construction and building. It sometimes blows me away, but it's fun to try to present it in a way that, you know, makes it interesting. I hope I'm doing that. I appreciate any and all of your feedback, and I'll see you all next Saturday, right? Have a
You're
fantastic
such a great teacher, Rodney. You're a great teacher.
Oh, that's sweet of you.
We appreciate you.
Thank you very much. And don't forget, eat the ears first on those bunnies.
Thanks, Rodney.
First Sunday after the first full moon, after the vernal equinox.
Yes. Yes. And don't let those kids beat you to the Easter eggs too.
Right?
Way.
I know.
No.
I'll just push them down. I can't run as fast as them.
Oh,
So
one little anecdote for me though. In my kids, you guys will appreciate this. My kids, we did Easter egg hunts with my girls until they were into their 30s. And the reason being is that I would take, you know, after they got a little bit bigger, I would take usually about $100 in ones, fives, tens, 20s, and some quarters, and stuff these, you know, plastic Easter eggs. And so it was a big deal for them. They could, you know, they could make some money, the kids. And so they would invite select people over. So I had an Easter egg hunt in our backyard. My daughters were both, you know, grown women, and they invited some friends over, and their friends, and one of my daughters wasn't her husband at the time. He's now her husband. You know, they found all this money, and they made like a bunch of money. And I think I had like a couple $100 that day, and they didn't share it with my daughter, and she's never forgiven them. And she's told me that she'll never participate in another Easter egg hunt if anybody else is invited. It's got to be just her. Anyway.
Have you ever thought of doing that to one of your classes?
What's that? Oh yeah, that's good. That's good. Who asked that? Dennis? Aurelio, way to go. Yeah, we're gonna hide motorcycles and stuff. Yeah.
Oh,
Get free cards and things like that, and Moderna vaccines over here.
Yeah, we'd always, when the family would get together, all the adults would pitch in a bunch of money, and we would do the different amounts and different eggs, and then there was the one big egg, you know, that had all kinds of money in it.
The big egg. So
yeah, let the little kids go first, you know.
Yeah. Well, now that I'm feeling loquacious, my dad, for my 40th birthday, my wife had a surprise birthday party for me, my wife at the time, and she rented a beach house in Carpinteria.
Oh, wow.
And then she sent me for a walk on the beach, and then I came back from the walk, and it was a surprise. All these people were there. And so we had this party during the day, and at one point out on the deck, there was a box just kind of appeared. And it was a box, you know, about the size of a shoebox, which it was a shoebox. And there was a slit in it, and there was a piece of like adding machine tape paper coming out of it with a bow on the end that said, "Pull me." So I did. I and a bunch of people came around. It was a present from my dad, as it turned out. And I kind of think I knew that because I recognized his printing, but it said, "Pull me, pull me." So I'm pulling this adding machine paper, and then it says, "Pull me," and then it said, "Toilet paper for the successful contractor." And then it would pull. And so I kept pulling, and it was $5 bills. Taped.
Oh, wow.
And then it was $10 bills, and then $20 bills, and then $50 bills, and then it finished with $100 bills. So it was $500 bucks.
Wow.
And
Well, that's fun.
really cool. I put it in a safe deposit box, and then one trip to Mexico 5 or 10 years later, I took the roll, and I would just roll off and tear off.
That's fun.
It was great.
That's creative.
Yeah, that was my dad. My dad was an unbelievable human being. God rest his soul. So, okay, I'm out of here. You're out of here too. It's been fun, gang. See you next Saturday, right?
Jose wants to show you a knife real quick.
Oh yeah, show me a knife. I want to see that.
He said, "Is your knife collection pretty big?"
Oh, no, not really. I got maybe, I don't know, a couple dozen, but I've got 4 or 5 pretty nice handmade ones.
I collect knives. I got a whole bunch. But anyway, I was showing the first knife I ever got. I bugged my mom and kept bugging her for a switchblade knife.
Yeah.
And my uncle knew she'd never get me a switchblade knife, but he did get me one. And I thought to myself, man, and he wrapped it in a big box. And this is what I ended up getting, Rodney. Can you see it?
Nice. Yeah.
No, push the button now. Push the button.
That's primo. That's primo, man.
Tiny.
Tiny. Yeah, I did a good toothpick too. No, that's
it, but Uncle told me, "Don't be mad. You got what you wanted, a switchblade."
You didn't say a size, right?
Good one. And he knew you probably weren't going to be holding up any liquor stores with that, baby.
This thing's going to be 45 years old next month.
Wow, that's fantastic. Yeah, we rent our house on VRBO, so most of my my good stuff is all put away. But I'll see if I can't find my knife collection, because I have a knife that I've had since I was 6 years old.
Oh, wow.
My dad gave it to me, and it's a slide blade stiletto. I'll try to find that, because it's an interesting knife. Now you got me thinking about knives. Okay, I'm going to go. Goodbye. See you all next week. It's been a real pleasure.
Thanks, Rodney. See you.
To you and your family.
Thank you. Happy Easter. Happy rebirth to everybody.
Yes, you too.
See y'all.
Take